Welcome to the 16th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, Jacob Cowker of WTAJ Sports, and a special guest nitwit each week. The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
The outcome of the Crow Park Classic all came down to the foot of Sam Ficken, and the senior was able to deliver. Welcome to the second edition of Nitwits. I'm joined by Lou Parado, Neil Riddell, and Mike Irwin, and I'm Jamie Baker, and we have a lot to talk about from yesterday's 26-24 final from Dublin. Guys, I think it's safe to say that not many Penn State fans have their fingernails anymore after yesterday's big win.
Well, Jamie, first of all, we want to welcome you to the Nitwits.
Well, thank you.
We got a little older today and a lot prettier. But what a fantastic opener, and the swing of emotions and the resiliency that this team has shown since the sanctions, really, and the character. And of course, it helps to have a guy like Hackenberg that can bring you back in the clutch.
Well, I know I was personally sitting on my couch practically in the fetal position when Ficken came on to kick that field goal. I mean, just let's talk a little bit about that scoring drive of UCF's leading up to it, and I guess the last 3 minutes of that game.
Well, I think the fans sort of, at least the fans watching TV were, oh no, sort of gave up on them. They didn't think the way Central Florida was coming back. We've seen things like that. Could this team do it? And I think the big thing was how they had the poise to come back with this new coaching staff. I mean, that showed the coaching staff as well as the players themselves and how they came back. And like Neil said, thank God Ficken made it. I mean, I like the kid. I've been around him. I don't know the players that well, but that kid deserved it. And he got an ESPN helmet sticker, which is big in the national world for making that kick. But thank God he made it.
There were a couple plays in that last drive that I think, in addition to Christian Hackenberg coming in there very calm. And I thought James Franklin was very calm. He wasn't real emotional at that point. But a couple of the plays, Bill Belton making that run to the sideline, getting out of bounds, and then Geno Lewis making the catch. And I thought he was out of bounds. And I give Franklin a lot of credit because he was on top of that. They didn't call him out of bounds, and the clock would have ran out. But he came up and he said timeout with 3 seconds to go. And if Franklin doesn't make that call, the game's over.
Yeah,
we lose.
I think Franklin initially thought that he was out of bounds and the clock was going to be stopped. So he was alert because the game could have ended on the spot there. Exactly. And there were some quirkiness in the officials and with the headsets and just the whole thing in Ireland. So that would have been a brutal way to end.
But it speaks well of the team, the way they had the poise and came back in this first game in a foreign country on this business trip.
Well, they set the tone. I mean, I think we all thought this was a key game to get off on the right foot and be a long flight home if they had lost that game. And I think they'll play with a little bit more enthusiasm next year and not be so concerned about how they're going to play. I mean, they're going to be a lot looser next week than they are after that big win.
You talk about that, though, Mike, and Ficken, for where he was 2 years ago at Virginia as a freshman, missing 4 field goals and an extra point. And for the game to boil down to a kick after he had already made 3 and a makeable, pretty much a chip shot, I think that just spoke so well. And the fact that they made him a captain Just such a great story.
Did you read what he said after the game? He said that he thought he shanked it. He thought it was going, and the wind maybe pushed it back in.
Yeah.
But he was a great. I was amazed by how all those young guys stood up, like you guys said, in the face of adversity and didn't back down. You look at Christian Hackenberg. I know he's only a sophomore. Some of those wide receivers, all young guys. I mean, just the way they all stepped on that field in front of all these fans in Ireland and were able to nail that 2-minute drill was unreal to me.
You know, he did it last year against Michigan, so he has the confidence when he's out there. And I thought we should have outscored him, and we should have been way ahead of that game. We outplayed in the first half. I forget what the yardage was, but probably 300 yards to 50 or something like that. And then, you know, only coming out of there 10-3. And I think we got the shaft on one call down on the offensive interference when is it Hamilton that caught the ball and was on his way, and they called him for a pass interference. So we'd have been in for another score.
Well, you know, they left some points on the board. I would agree with that. Hamilton tripped, and there were some. They settled for a field goals. They were in the. But you know, UCF did too. UCF went for it on 4th and goal at the 1, and they could have used those 3 points.
Well, you know, we're going to talk more later about the pluses, but the defense came through on that 4th down play, the great goal line stand they had. But at the same time, it was just the fact that Hackenberg, he had 6 to 8 different receivers. It wasn't just Lewis and Hamilton that were catching the balls and the tight ends. And I mean, he was looking around, and even when he made those 2 bad throws, he picked it right back up.
It's great to see some of those young guys step up. I mean, Hamilton and Lewis, played outstanding games, and Jesse James, I think between the 3 of them, they had about 25 catches, and they do that every game. It's going to be a good season.
Yeah,
I think.
Hamilton. I think Mark Brennan actually, who's still flying back, said look out for Hamilton this year, and some of the guys that were off the radar that we anticipated might make an impact.
But at least
he
they
was
can't.
fantastic.
The defenses of the other team can't concentrate like they did on Robinson. Now, I mean, and there may be a couple other receivers there that they're doing. I mean, that's what I thought was really great, the way they was throwing the ball, looking off receivers. And let's give credit to that offensive line for at least the pass defense.
Well, let's quickly touch a little bit on the success of the defense, at least in the first half. I know Pete DeNovo was a new quarterback, but they had him looking like a deer in headlights out there.
Yeah, I think they adjusted well as the game went on. They loaded up the box and forced him to beat with the pass, and he couldn't do it. I was impressed with this coaching staff, how they adjusted to some things on the fly, both sides of the ball.
You know, I was going to say, I think this is the best defensive coaching that they've had there in several years. I mean, you didn't find our guys out of position very often, and most of the time we come out complaining somebody's wide open going down the middle. But even the passes that were caught were real close to being knocked away or something. And I give Shoop a lot of credit for setting that defense up. I mean, I thought they played great. I mean, the defense.
You don't think that's a little bit of a premature declaration? Or they didn't have a tough act to
I get
follow?
very frustrated when they leave these guys wide open. You know, a lot of cushion up front. But I think Shoop is a lot more aggressive than our old defensive coordinators.
Well, think of what Hall did. I mean, he was in a lot of plays. We have a new Z-man in Zettel. I mean, he was right up the middle. I mean, it was a great defense right there. But there were holes back in that secondary.
Well, yeah, I thought Barnes played with a lot of renewed energy as well after not playing so well last year. Their whole defensive front, I thought, was good.
Well, speaking of the coaching staff and the new coaches, we've touched a lot on the players, but one thing we haven't got to talk about much yet is the debut of James Franklin. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about how he did his first time on the sidelines.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need.
I'm Christian Brady, Dean of the Schreier Honors College at Penn State in Dublin, Ireland, after Penn State's win. And you're watching the NitWits. Go PSU!
Welcome back. Well, there was so much hype leading up to
Brennan
this
is
game.
with us.
I know. It's everywhere. But not just the actual Crow Park Classic, but the debut of James Franklin as head coach. So if you guys had to grade him, look back at this game, how do you think Franklin did?
Well, you know, I'd say an A. I mean, when it's a good opponent away from home, you have a lot of adversity. You know, they didn't have their headsets, and apparently the rule, I thought the rule was when you lose your headsets that the other guy has to take theirs off too.
The TV reporter reported later that towards the end of the game that the other team did not have their headsets too, so I don't know, there might be some confusion.
Right,
that
but
might
I
get
mean,
clarified.
You know, I thought there was a little questionable timeout management late. They probably cost themselves about 10 seconds on that last drive, and I thought the first half could have been managed a little bit differently in the last couple minutes. But overall, this guy has so much enthusiasm, and like Steve Jones said, we're waiting for Coach Franklin, and he's down there, and it may be a while because there's 12,000 Penn State fans, and looks like he's hugging every one. So yeah, he's infectious.
You know, that's the thing. I would give him an A+. I mean, he's so engaging with the players. I mean, he gave Ficken a big hug after he, after the game and after he made that field goal. But prior to that, Christian Hackenberg came off after having a good drive, and he's hugging him. So the players love that guy, I think. I mean, it's a lot different than some of the other coaches that are dictatorial all the time. I mean, he's working with those kids, and I think he's a positive reinforcement for those kids on an ongoing basis.
But I think it also goes to the rest of that coaching staff. I mean, they've been with him all this time, and that's what I said before the game, that I think the big plus for Penn State was this coaching staff, and they proved it yesterday. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They acted as a team. You didn't see many mental breakdowns. I had a little more questions about the time management at the end of the game. I think that they need to brush that up. It looked like the old days where we're losing the clock at the end of the game and may lose it.
The only one there was the one where we got the first down and then we didn't call the timeout. We had 3 timeouts, and they didn't call the timeout, and Hackenberg took about 8 or 9 seconds off the clock to execute the play. So they probably should have called a timeout, but you know, the referees aren't hurrying everybody to get back to the line, and you know, it could have been a critical point if we lose those seconds.
It's his first game, and you know, you're over there. I just think there was no panic, and despite the issue with the headset, it seemed that there was still a pretty smooth operation, especially for the first game.
Yeah, the play calling was pretty damn good. I mean, am I allowed to say that?
You can say whatever you want.
We'll go with it.
I'm the anti-nitwit, but it was darn good.
Well, and then you look at Crow Park. I mean, just getting to go to Dublin, getting to have that whole national exposure, everything that happened there. I was so jealous every time they were going in and out of the game. They were showing all the shots of everywhere, and it was just like the music, the fans, everything.
When I say the play caller, there were a couple plays we could talk about later that were a little questionable. The goal line, the one with Zwinnick and with...
The one thing I did like, though, is they couldn't run the ball, but it seems, and especially when you have a guy so poised at the line as Hackenberg, they kind of made their little receiver screens part of their run game with the tight ends moving out and whatnot. So a lot of the short passing game is sort of a glorified run game.
Well, I think their intent is to throw the ball more because they're not geared for an offensive attack up front. I mean, they're spreading the field with Hackenberg and throwing a lot of these short passes. And, you know, they're not firing out on the line. They're more delayed blocking and trying to find a seam in there. So I'm not so sure. I mean, I think the offensive line did what they wanted to do. I mean, they kept them off of Hackenberg, like Jamie said earlier. But, no, they offensively, as far as running the ball, now they went into that shotgun a few times to run the ball, you know, which might be a change of plan later on, but
it worked a little better later than it did earlier.
But it just seems that the coaching staff got the most out of the material. They knew their players well, and they knew where the talent was, where the talent wasn't, and they coached that way.
Yeah, and they gained a lot from this game. 8:30 in the morning, all the national exposure, all the good feeling they have with their fans. I mean, the fans made a statement that they're ready for a bowl game.
And let's face it, they owned the number of plays. They had many more plays than Central Florida, and the time of possession. So, you know, I was fearful. You mentioned this earlier, but I was fearful they left too many points on the board. It sounded like the old Joe Paterno saying, you know, we got to be careful. The memories of '99 and the Minnesota game and the memories of 208 in the Iowa game started coming me back. And, well, those 12 to 15, 30,000 fans, how many of the Penn Staters were there? Were they going to go home disappointed? I don't think they did.
Well, yeah, the other thing you don't want to lose is that Central Florida has a good football team. I mean, they had 9 starters back on defense, and they just reloaded on defense. So getting that kind of yardage against a good defensive team, and they were top 10 last year, and they ended up with a win. I think it was Baylor in the bowl game, but to end up with the BCS.
They also were known as a comeback team. So when they came back, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's over. You know.
Well, they threw that big that pass, that 4th and 10, I think it was, when the guy went over our defensive back and caught it. It did.
That was a back-breaking play. Tremendous throw and catch, and I think we'll get to that a little bit.
Well,
maybe some areas that
we've talked about a lot of these
up.
positives, but there were definitely a few breakdowns, not all necessarily pots of gold and rainbows. When we get back, we'll take a look at a few of the areas that are going to need a little bit of extra help before the Akron game. Don't go away.
The NitWits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life.
We're Penn State alumni from Dublin, and you're watching the NitWits.
Welcome back. There were a ton of positives to take away from Penn State's 26-24 win over Central Florida, but there are also a few things that are going to need some serious work, like the run game. Let's start a little bit with that. Bill Belton and Zach Zwinak only combined for 48 yards total.
Yeah, I thought that some of that trace to the offensive line, Gaia got called for a hold, and maybe that's what sprung Belton's 20-yard run around the edge, but that was brought back. I thought Zwinak might have had a crack a couple times that maybe didn't turn it up. And, you know, this is trying to get used to a new offensive line. You know, I think it wasn't totally unexpected.
Well, I mean, we had a great game from Sam Ficken, but a few breakdowns on punt and kickoff.
Well, that kickoff, people remember, if it wasn't what Trevor Williams made that shoestring tackle, basically, that would have been a different game. And we still need work on the special teams, but I thought the special teams were much better this year than in this one game than they had been most of the time.
And if you look on returning the punts and kickoffs, they put that kid in from Delaware. I think he's the fastest kid in Delaware, they say, Haley or something, and he almost broke one early. So they're getting better people in those positions, giving them an opportunity to excel in those positions. And I agree with you that Trevor Williams made a big play. That kid's going to score a touchdown.
I think getting the running game up is their biggest thing. But people also forget that, you know, when that great pass that Lewis caught, Hackenberg was belted. I mean, he stood on that pressure, and as long as I mean, if you talk about things that need to improve, they better get that backup quarterback some action, because I'm not sure, you know, you saw throughout the game that he was getting
he was limping a couple of. There were 3 penalties on special teams that were pretty costly, and a couple of them looked like they were very borderline calls. Walker on the opening kickoff. Then there was a personal foul penalty that sustained a UCF drive, and then Davis, who did struggle as a cornerback, was called for holding that wiped out a pretty big return. So if they can eliminate the penalties on special teams, that would be the first step.
But, you know, I hate to say what Joe Paterno used to say. So you're not as good as when you win, or as bad, but you prove the best between the first and second game, and we'll see what happens with Akron.
All right, and quickly, let's kind of touch on what happened when you had the quarterback switch. DeNovo did nothing, and then all of a sudden, Justin Holman comes in, and it's a new ball game.
Yeah, you wonder what that coaching staff was doing all preseason. You know, how would they come up with DeNovo over Holman when that kid came in and he looked super? I mean, I'm not sure he played the whole game. I'm glad he didn't come in until the second half, because he made a big difference in their offense.
Yeah, but I was reading the Orlando paper about that, and the whole thing is that at the end of spring practice, that quarterback was the #1 quarterback, but O'Leary delayed the decision. Of course, it turned out to be the wrong decision. The Orlando Sentinels are going to go after him on that type stuff.
Well, they'll let George alone. They've had like 3 10-win seasons, I think, the last 3 years.
He's done a very, very good job at a non-BCS place I think he's really an outstanding football coach. I mean, I'm not saying he coached a great game yesterday, but for them to be playing the heavyweight names that they've played and beaten and been competitive with these last couple of years.
I think
impressive.
they did do it. I mean, they hung around.
I think he should have gone for the field goal in the first quarter.
Okay, well.
You know, those 3 points.
That's why you're not coaching Central Florida. He is.
Well, there we go. I think we've said pretty much all we can about the Crow Park Classic, but we still have week 2 coming up
How
with
about
the
that?
Akron Zips. Are we going to have to fear the Roo? That's what I want to know. We're going to have our predictions coming up in just a few minutes.
The NitWits are brought to you by the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
All right, well, now it's time for the Akron Zips. Let's get some predictions on that game, guys.
Well, Mike's the Nitwit of the Week. He almost nailed the score, which would have been worth a couple points. Congratulations, Mike. So you bat first.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was a tough week last week because everybody was real close within a couple points. I mean, it was a tough game to predict, and I'm glad it worked out the way it did. So the chair has at least one ball going forward here. You know? But, yeah, I'm looking at Akron, and I know their coach is probably the biggest thing going for Akron is Terry Bowden. You know, Bobby Bowden's son has been there a couple years now. And, you know, he'll coach them up, but I know they won and they beat Howard over the weekend, whoever Howard is.
Nice.
But anyway, so I want to predict 35, Penn State 35, Akron 10. The Zips only scored 10 points.
Okay, I'll go next. I think there's going to be an inevitable emotional letdown under most circumstances, but I think Franklin's strength is this 107-pound sign and how he's really hashtag. Thank you for the modern terminology. Beating the drum. So I think that'll negate it a little bit, but they're still going to be a little tired, I think. And Akron had Michigan on the run last year. I'm going to say Penn State 33, Akron 20.
All right.
Well, Brennan would kick my butt if I don't predict, which I normally do. I'm going to say 35-17. I think they're going to, the coaching staff's going to say, they get it going. But you never know. Games can change and it could be a rough game.
Brennan did say 35-13. We'd said we'd allow his pick just for our weekly.
And Jacob and I are in this one together.
Yeah.
Just with the long trip, I think it's going to be a little less high scoring this time around. Knowing the Mid-American Conference being an Ohio University girl, I think it's going to be 28-7 Penn State.
Okay,
So.
we thought this was your chance to really make a statement with your MAC roots.
Jacob would kill me when he got back from Ireland. Well, that's about all we've got this week on the second edition of NitWits. Thanks for joining us. We'll be seeing you next week after the Akron game.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the NitWits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.